Hi everyone, and welcome to this next video on normalization in the Now platform. In this video, we're going to look at how to automatically create hardware models whenever we import configuration items and have them normalized in the process. In the previous video, we looked at hardware normalization using the content service, and we saw that the content service is a central ServiceNow repository that contains data about manufacturers, products, product models, lifecycle data, and so forth that we as a customer are able to tap into and use to normalize our hardware models, thereby having accurate data in our own ServiceNow instance. And in that last video, I gave you some demonstrations where I just manually created hardware models so we could see how that they were normalized using that content service. But what if you are importing configuration items? So you don't actually have the hardware model yet, or you may have the hardware model already, but you're importing configuration items. How does that connection actually work, where we want to reconcile or identify the hardware models corresponding to those CIs, and if we don't have one, to create one automatically so that we can then normalize them? How does that work? In Discovery, we're lucky because there is a mechanism in place where Discovery will automatically create, or the platform will automatically create hardware models corresponding to the CIs that are detected. But what if you're using the import set interface, or if you're using the Integration Hub ETL interface, or some other import mechanism? How can we actually create hardware models or look up hardware models whenever we are importing configuration items? So in this video, we're going to have a look at that method. We're going to dig a little bit in the platform, uncover this method, and then we're going to use that same method that Discovery uses to normalize or to create hardware models whenever we import configuration items. So ladies and gentlemen, to cut to the chase, the method that Discovery uses to look up hardware models and to associate them with CIs that have been discovered, or else to create hardware models for those corresponding CIs, is this here. It is a script include called MakeAndModelJS. So if we take a quick look at it, it contains a few different functions, but the two main ones are these here. MakeAndModelJS.FromNames and MakeAndModelJS.FromNames and number. Okay, there's actually a very important distinction between these two. Both of them are doing the same thing. They are looking up the hardware model table to find an associated hardware model for the corresponding CI, and if one doesn't exist, to create one. Okay, it's here. Okay, the first one takes three parameters: make, model, and model type. Okay, the model type being hardware, for example. Okay, model being the model name, make being the manufacturer name. The second function, and this was introduced in Hardware Asset Management version 5.0, so the Tokyo release of ServiceNow, does the same thing, but it takes two additional parameters. Okay, the most important one here is this one, model number. So in the previous video, we looked at how hardware normalization takes existing values on the hardware model record and tries to look up the corresponding record in the content service, and if it finds a match, then it will normalize that record. But we also saw that it needs as much information as possible. If you only have the manufacturer, or it's only able to look up the manufacturer and maybe the model name, then you only get like a partially normalized record. So to increase your chances of having a fully normalized hardware model record, ideally, you need the manufacturer, the model name, and the model ID as well. Okay. So with Discovery, by default, it's going to use this function now. Okay, this is actually, as I said, a relatively new addition to this script include. Okay, and it's switched on by default. There's a system property actually that you can use to change which function is used here. So if you happen to be importing configuration items outside of Discovery, for example, using the import set interface, then you can call this script include from a transform script. Now, I'm not going to go through this method with you here. Instead, I'm going to direct you to this article in the support knowledge base. Okay, it's a public article, so everyone has access to it. It explains exactly how you can use that script include in your transform scripts to look up hardware models and else create them. Okay, so essentially that's all you need to do, is just to reference that script include in your transform scripts. If you're using Integration Hub ETL, extraction, transform, and load, there is an out-of-the-box transform definition that you can use that will call this script. So let's go to Integration Hub ETL. I've got an existing one set up here, okay, for the data actually that I'm going to be using in the demo coming up in a moment. You can see here, I've got some fields that I've imported from a spreadsheet, which we'll take a look at shortly. And I've got these transform fields here that I have created. Okay, now most of them are based off this one here, the cleanse hardware model transform type. Okay, you can see the definition on the right hand side here. Okay, it takes two input parameters, the manufacturer name and the model ID, or the model name. Okay, and then if we come back here, that transform definition will call this script include, the CMDB integration hardware model util script include. But all this is really doing is taking those input parameters that we specify and calling the MakeAndModelJS script include that we just looked at. Okay, but if you note here, it's actually calling the from names function. Okay, remember in the script include that we just looked at, there are two functions. There's from names and there's from names and number, which is the newer version. Okay. So what this will actually mean in practice is that we won't get a model number returned in our hardware model that we create. If we need to create one, we won't have that record populated with a model number. We have the manufacturer, we will have the model name, but we won't have the model number. So that means that there's a pretty good chance that we won't then have a normalized record as a result. And if I go back to my example here, this is exactly what has happened. So this transform returns a few different properties here. We can see this is the field that I'm using to populate the data from the lookup. It's actually getting essentially two different things. It's getting the manufacturer name and the manufacturer sys-ID. You can see they are the first two kind of properties there. They're separated by three pipes. And the second object that is, or second record reference that is getting is the model name, including the model ID, or the model sys-ID. Okay, so we're getting the manufacturer and the sys-ID and the model and the sys-ID. And then I've just used some split transforms here to kind of extract that data. And then in my mapping, which we'll look at shortly, I've mapped that data to the corresponding fields in the CI record. Okay, but the result of this, when we actually create a hardware model using this data only, this is what it looks like. We get the manufacturer. We get the model name, but we do not get the model number because we haven't provided that as input. Okay, we don't get the model number when we use that cleanse hardware model transform type, which means, and we can see this on the right hand side in our form, we only get a partially or a manufacturer normalized record here. It's only able to reconcile the manufacturer. Okay, however, there is a workaround. Hopefully they will modify this transform type here to include the model number, so then it will actually reference the second function in that script include. So instead of referencing the from names here, it will actually reference the from names and number instead. Okay, and then we'll get the model number in the hardware model record, and then we will have, as I said, a better chance, a much better chance of having a fully normalized record at the end. So let's take a look now at how to set this up in Integration Hub ETL. So the first thing you'll need to do is to ensure you've actually got the latest versions of two different applications. The first one is Integration Hub ETL. Currently I'm running 3.1.0, which is at the moment the latest version. And the other thing that you will need as well to perform these transforms, or the transform that we need, will be the Integration Commons for CMDB. And currently I'm running version 2.10.0. Now what I'm going to import is just a simple spreadsheet. It's this one right here. Okay, just contains two records for the Latitude 5000 series laptop. Okay, you can see also here that the manufacturer, one is recorded as simply Dell and the other one is Dell Inc. Okay, and we can see the model ID here as well, which is actually typically what you'll extract from a discovery source, or if you're using some other tool, you'll have a value that looks something like this. So in this case, we've actually got like a product name, the Latitude 5000, and a specific model number, which is 5580. So we'll actually need to find a way to extract the relevant data here. Okay, so if I come back, I've already created a data source for this, and you can see the attachment to this data source, and I've specified the sheet number and the header row. Okay. Now, when all this is said and done, we should have not only a hardware model created, but it should be normalized, because this record here is what we have in the content service. Now, granted, it's an older product model, but nevertheless, we have a product model currently in our content service, and this is it. Okay. So theoretically, this should work. We should have a normalized record because this model that we're going to import is currently in our content library. Okay, so the next step will be to actually perform the transform, or to set this up. Now, I've already kind of half completed this. So I've specified the import source data, that data source, and I've also gone ahead and previewed the data here. So this is what we currently have from the spreadsheet only. I haven't done anything else. But now this is what we'll need to change. We'll actually need to add a few different transforms here so we can get the right data in the right fields. So the first thing I'm going to do is to extract the model number from this model ID field here, because we need the model number as one of our imports when we pass that as a parameter to the script. So at the moment it's just recorded as a string with the entire model name, but we just need the model number. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new transform here. The transform type is going to be a regular expression replace. I'll give it a description. I'll just call this get model number. The output column, let's call this u model number. And the input column will be our model ID field. And then the expression that I'm going to use is very simple. So I'm just going to get the last string here, or the last part of that string here. So I'm looking for any non-white space characters followed by a white space character and any number of those, and then that should give me the 5580. Okay, I'm not going to replace it with anything, so I will apply that. Okay, and you can see here the new field has been created and the regular expression has been successfully applied, and we've got the 5580. All right, so now we can create our second transform field here now to call that script include. So I'm going to come along here and create a new transform. Now the one I'm going to use is called multiple input script, which basically just allows us to take multiple imports from different fields that we currently have, use them in our script, and then output some other value. So it's a very flexible transform type that you can use here. If you go to the documentation for creating an ETL transform map, there is some documentation here on this multiple import script. Okay, and if you scroll a little bit further down, there are a couple of examples here as well that are very helpful. All right, so that's what I'm using. Okay, so I'm going to rename this here to get model sysid. It's going to be from or using that script include make and model.js. Okay, that's what we need. So we're going to basically do a lookup. If we find the hardware model, if it already exists, we'll return that. If not, we'll create a new hardware model using the data that we pass to it. Okay, and this is going to be called, this field is going to be called uModel sysid. sys_id might be formally correct. All right. So we've got 3 input columns here. The first one will be the manufacturer. The second one will be the model name. I'll just use the model ID here. And the third one, that one that we just created, our model number. Okay. And now we've got our script down here. It's a little bit hard to see everything here. It's kind of squeezed into the corner. What I'm going to do, I've got this script ready to go over here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it, and then we'll take a quick look at it. It basically uses this same template that I've got here already, and then just populates the variables with the values that we've got for our inputs. So manufacturer, model ID, model number. I'll need to actually modify that model number variable value here. Okay, and we pass those parameters to that script include that we looked at. Okay, and then we return the sysid for the model, and that's it. And that's what we should have in here. Now, as soon as I apply this script should actually be executed, and the script should do its work. So in other words, even though we haven't run this transform yet, it's going to use this data to look up a corresponding hardware model record. And if not, it will actually create the hardware model right here, right now. Again, before I've even gone ahead and transformed this data. So apply. Okay, the sysid is not there. The record was not created. Why is that? I think I know why. Let me go back to the transform here. Come down. All right, I'm in a custom application scope here, and this script include is in the global scope. So because of that, I'll need to specify that global here. All right, so we'll save that once more and then apply that. There we go. And as you can see here, we've now got the sysid for our model. Now this is actually a new model that's been created. If I go to my other tab here for hardware models and just refresh this list, there it is right at the top. Okay, I haven't transformed the data yet. I haven't actually got the CI in the system yet, but we do have a hardware model as a result of executing that script. Okay. If we open it, we can see the manufacturer, the name, the model number, and we've also now got a fully normalized hardware model. Okay, so it's used all that data, not only created a new hardware model, but used that data to find a corresponding match in our content library, and we've got a normalized hardware model. Okay, so now the only thing left to do is just to do the mapping in our data import and then run the transform and just see the corresponding CI as well. So let's go ahead and finish the job. One more thing we'll have to do before we move on is to take care of the manufacturer here. Now, we could rely on our other normalization features such as normalization data service or field normalization, but because this is a reference field, you may find that they don't work here. Okay, You may find they work with regular string fields, but not with reference fields. You know, there's a difference. So instead, we'll normalize these values right here within this transform. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one here and call this one cleanse company. That's convenient, isn't it? And we'll just call this one get company, get manufacturer. And we'll output this to a new column here, manufacturer number 2. And we'll have the manufacturer as the input. Okay, apply. And that will kind of do the heavy lifting for us. So now we return not only the display value for that field, del inc, okay, we also get the sysid, which we're able then to use in our mapping. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's mark that as complete now. I've got no relationships to add, but I will need to finish off the field mapping here. I've started it, but I haven't completed it. So let's come here to edit mapping. I've got the serial number and the asset tag mapped already. So I will need to add the manufacturer as well as the model. And because both of those are reference fields, we'll need to specify the sysid for both of them. So let's come here and add both of those fields here. Oops, get the typing going, manufacturer, and then the model ID. Okay, so they're both down the bottom now. And I'm going to put the manufacturer number 2, so the sysid, not the display value, the sysid, pop that in there and do the same thing for our model ID, the sysid that we got from that script. And then that should be fine now. Okay, so if we come back, mark that as complete once more, and test this. There we go. We've got our 2 records created. Okay. If you don't believe me, we can actually go to the computers table here and just refresh this list. There they are at the top. I mean, they're missing the name, the company. Well, I mean, a lot of fields that are missing from these records, but we get the manufacturer reconciled to that normal value. We get the model reconciled to that one that we created while we were setting this up. So it's actually a new model that we just saw. It's normalized. And if we open up the record here, we can see we've got the asset tag, serial number, the manufacturer, and the model ID. And in a short while, we'll also have the asset because there is a asynchronous or background job that runs every 15 minutes to create assets from CI. So that's not there yet. So everyone, if you've watched the entire video, thank you very much. You are in a position now where you can take full advantage of the power of the Now platform to not only import configuration items, but to get hardware models looked up and otherwise created automatically, to have them fully normalized, and to have the data in your ServiceNow instance, in your CMDB, as accurate as possible, all with a few relatively easy steps. So coming up in the next videos, we are going to look at software normalization. So stay tuned for those.